Hi, I'm Shaun Reynolds.
And I'm Rachael Reynolds.
And welcome to What Was I Made For?
The podcast about doing what you love and prioritising your happiness.
While we aim to inspire, motivate and entertain you, please note that we're not licensed therapists or certified experts.
So if you're considering major life decisions like starting a llama farm or quitting your job to become a professional skydiving instructor, maybe get a second opinion.
Enjoy the show.
See, I just do what I want, do what I love. I don't want to stop, don't want to grow up. Just me being me, don't follow the crowd. Don't be a sheep, look at me now. But now it's time to make more, create more. Looking at the points cause it's time to take score. Feeling like I'm grown now that I can face more. Got one question, what was I made for?
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. Today we have a very special guest, Shawna Hamic, and you may know her from one of Rachel's favourite TV shows, Orange is the New Black.
Yeah, I was fangirling hard for this one. I recently saw Shawna in Unfortunate, which is the untold story of Ursula the Sea Witch. Had no idea that she could also sing and dance as well as act. I'd only seen her on Orange is the New Black, so that was very exciting. Sent her a little DM after the show thinking, yeah, right, as if she's going to reply. And lo and behold, here's her episode. Doesn't matter if you're not an Orange is the New Black fan. She has some incredible stories. Yeah, there's definitely something for everybody in this one.
Lots of tips for young performers. But without further ado, let's get stuck in. Shawna Hamic, let's go.
Yay!
Shawna, hey!
Hello!
We know how busy you are, so we so appreciate this, honestly. And I know we only have you for a short amount of time, so we won't waste too much time with who we are and stuff like that. But just to give you a little bit of background on why we launched this podcast, I run a dance school with lots and lots of students who all want to go into the arts. So we wanted to do a podcast about helping people to do what they love and prioritise their happiness. And I think for a lot of parents, they don't really understand a lot about the arts and the ins and the outs. So it helps them to then support their kids in pursuing their dreams. And we just thought your story would be really valuable for them to hear.
Well, that's lovely. Okay, great. That's lovely to know. Thank you.
And I was lucky enough to come and see you in Unfortunate recently, which was amazing. And if anyone doesn't know, it's the untold story of Ursula the Sea Witch. And you play Ursula.
I do. I play Ursula the Sea Witch, who was always my favorite villain as a child, oddly enough.
Really?
And I think it's because it was one of the only times where I felt represented on screen. Even though she was animated, she was still a big girl like me. And so it was important. And I know she was the villain, supposedly, but it made me happy to see somebody like me represented in a big movie. So, because at the time when I was a kid, this is many years now, it wasn't as common to see people as, human. It was still really the idealized, not that it's not now, but the idealized image of what somebody who's beautiful is on screen. So skinny and tall and whatever. And so even to have any sort of representation was a big deal. And then you have, Melissa McCarthy and Queen Latifah and all kinds of people that come in and they break open the mold more fully and Hollywood obviously opens up slightly. It's not enormously open, but it's opened up somewhat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, but yeah, back in the day, Ursula was the gal I wanted to be. And I always dreamt of playing her in the Disney version of the show, because I've always loved musicals. And then this opportunity came around where I got a call from my agent. It's like, hey, this show in London wants to know if you'd be willing to audition for the role of Ursula. And I was like, yes, please. So that's how it came about. So here I am. I'm currently in Blackpool.
So you're still touring it now, aren't you? When does the tour finish?
Middle of July. So we played London for 3 months and then left in beginning of February to tour the UK. And yeah, we play through July 14th.
Amazing. If anyone hasn't seen it, please go and watch it. It is fabulous. So funny. Shawna, you are amazing. I'm a big Orange is the New Black fan, so that's where I knew you from. I had no idea that you could sing and do all the rest of it. So it was such a pleasure seeing you in such a different role to what I knew you from. But yeah, go and get yourselves to that show, guys, because it is fabulous. But anyway, shall we?
Don't bring your children.
No,
don't bring your children.
I was about to chime in and
please,
say that
please don't bring your children.
For any diehard Disney fans, it might be a slightly different thing to what you're used to seeing.
There's all the little ones turning up in their Little Mermaid outfits. Like, I can't wait.
Oh yeah, no, we've had them, and they generally sit in the front row, and I cuss within the first 2 lines. And I, whenever that happens, I know it's sort of horrible of me. I was like, we've given you warnings. We've told you it's 16 and above, and still you bring your 6-year-old to the show. So I'm going to say the F word right to them, because this is your fault. And now you're going to have conversations you didn't anticipate having this soon in their life. Yeah. So you're welcome. Also your fault. So there you go.
Are they still there in the front row after the interval?
Nope, not generally. We warned you.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, well, let's get stuck into what we usually do on this podcast, and we kind of like to kick things off with talking about what did young Shawna, what were the big dreams when you were young? Did you always want to be a performer?
Well, originally I wanted to be a florist when I was a child, young child. So there was lots of wildflowers. My grandfather was a minister in California, and there were lots of flowers that grew in the parsonage and the church area and the grounds of the church. And I would pick them, and then I would go onto the street corner by myself and hand them out to people. Times they have changed, where I probably would be kidnapped now if I was that. But back in the young, innocent days of my youth, I would do that. And my parents were like, great, how adorable. So I wanted to be a florist. And then I was always into singing. I sang in church, started singing when I was 3. And then, we did church plays and musicals and that kind of thing. And I always loved it. And then I got into choirs when I was in school. So junior high and high school, I was in choir. And my sister is older than I am, and so my parents would be the chaperones for when we would go on field trips when she was in the choir before I was there. And I got to go along because, theater, and my parents, they're not going to pay for a babysitter. So I went to all the shows, and when we saw Les Miserables when I was young, the first national tour of Les Miserables, when it hit Los Angeles in California, I saw that show and I was like, wait, that's it. That's what I want to do. And I told my mom in the middle of the show, I was like, Ma, I want to be her when I grow up. And she was like, oh, little Eponine, little Cosette. And I'm like, no. I want to be Madame Thénardier. And she was like, okay, great. Stop talking. I was like, okay. But it was the first time I realized that you could be paid, right? You could be paid to do that. You could be paid to make people laugh. Yeah. And so that sort of set me on my path, where I was lucky that I knew early on. So maybe some of your kids that you're teaching, and they just know. And luckily I had parents that supported me in that were like, okay, we're going to figure this out. We're going to make this happen. And it's going to be hard, but we'll see, we'll support. And they did. And that has never changed. So I'm really lucky in that sense, because a lot of the people I know from New York sort of did it against parents' wishes, if you will. You know what I mean? They did it in spite of their parents going, well, you should have a real job. You should have a real career. You need a backup plan, which, is a viable choice, and there are absolute options. But for me, I knew I needed to just go after it. And while there's things I can do to make rent or whatever, other than that, I always knew that it's what I wanted for sure, was to be an artist, and specifically Madame Thénardier in Les Miserables. And then the 25th anniversary production rolled around, and I went and auditioned against my agent's wishes, because they were like, no, you're too young. And I booked it anyway. So I got to keep a promise I made to my mother 27 years ago or whatever it was at that time, where I would be Madame Thénardier, and then I was for the big official new tour. So yeah, I knew early on, and it stuck. Like, it wasn't ever something that I was like, oh, never mind, I'm going to give up. It's too hard. It is too hard, but I just haven't given up. So
yeah, absolutely.
So when you said your parents' support, what did their support look like? Was it they put you through like acting schools or?
Well, we did not have money growing up. So it was, the public school system for me. So they supported us by being the chaperones and helping us raise money with boosters or those kind of things where, you do the raffles and you donate your time because they didn't have the money to do it. Like, my mom actually specifically didn't want me to take voice lessons until I was in college. There was like one voice teacher in the town, and she wanted me to find my own voice and my own way of singing because with choir, like we would have voice things to a certain extent, like support and proper breathing and all those kind of things. And so I had a bit of that. So I wasn't just blindly going at it, but more, she wanted me to find who I was first before I took on the embodiment of the voice a voice teacher thought I should have. And it worked out for me. I don't know that it works out for everybody, but it definitely worked out for me because then I had proper voice training in college. But so support was just their belief above and beyond and almost anything else, that it was difficult. The career was uncertain, but sure, why not me? And just that baseline of belief beyond anything else monetarily that they could have done had they had the means, it meant everything to me. It was the foundation that I built everything else on. You know what I mean? So I can work out money. I can figure out teachers and lessons and a college path because I couldn't go to a 4-year college because I couldn't afford it. And I went to a community college and had the best time ever. And my entire education cost me $3,000 for 3 years. You know what I mean? So my voice lessons for a semester cost $11 at a community college near where I was. So there's not one path. You know what I mean? There's not just one way. If I go to this school or if I take this lesson, that will get you there. There is no guarantee ever. But you sort of just have to find the path that's right for you. And that was what I was able to do with their support. And yeah, I mean, my mother, my sister, and I all sang in a trio together, and we would go to churches. Wow. My dad would be like a minister or something, and we'd travel from church to church. So we sang always together. So I understood harmony and I understood, storytelling. And then I wanted to do community theater. Like I wanted to do theater. And so my family started auditioning too. My mom and my dad, we would all do shows together. So I come from an artistic household, you know what I mean? Yeah. And they did it because they were going to have to be there anyway, right? They were going to have to drive me to rehearsals and they were going to have to like take me to all the auditions. And they're like, well, we're here. So, you know what I mean? So they ended up doing it too. So it ended up being like me growing up. Yeah, me growing up, their support was, we're going to do it too and figure it out. And then, my dad branched out a little bit, actually. He started doing TV and film. He got a show as a pilot, as like a detective in the background or whatever. He wasn't like a big part, but he started doing things other than that. And I had never done TV and film because, like I said, it wasn't acceptable to be a big girl at the time. But he booked a cop drama, which... the pilot, and they filmed the pilot with James Earl Jones, and then they were going to be released, and they were in the same TV series as NYPD Blue, which I don't know if you all know about that show, but it was a huge show back in the day in the US. And so my dad's show didn't get picked up, so he sort of gave up. He didn't do it anymore. But because he had the one shot, and he was like, "Oh my God, James Earl Jones, and we're going to do it." And then it's this other cop show that's like unbelievable. It goes for like 10 seasons or whatever it is. But like, so he had sort of dipped his toe into it before I even knew what it was or knew it was a thing. But yeah, so I come from artistic people, and that's kind of helpful too.
So because his opportunity maybe came and went, was he apprehensive about you maybe wanting to dive into it?
Of the two, of my parents, probably. But I think there was also within him that moment of maybe I should have tried again. Maybe I should have gone after it. But, he was the dad, and he wanted to be the breadwinner, and he wanted to be the strong, moral center dude that, like, that's so strong and, like, figured out the house. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's the role he took on. And so, which lots of people choose to do, and it feels right for them. And so, so no, he gave it up, and it was sort of like he did never look back because he made a different choice, which I think is honorable and a viable choice as well. Like when you figure out, oh, maybe this is not the struggle I want, you know what I mean? Then then it becomes untenable. So like, because it's too hard, you know what I mean? So,
absolutely. So at the community college, Shawna, did you actually study like performing arts while you were there?
Yeah, I was, I actually didn't do like English and maths and all those things. I only did, it was a 3-year intensive performing arts program. So I was part of a choir called the Citrus Singers, and it was like 6 days a week, 12 hours a day when I was there. It still exists, the program, which is cool. But it was, we had, gosh, for the Christmas season, we had, starting in December, I don't know, 80 concerts in the month of December. So there would be 2 and 3 a day. We would go to different country clubs and stuff. It was, it was hardcore intensive. It was my entire life. But I feel like that was great for me because I was immersed in it, and they weren't teaching us just one thing, right? So for part of the year, it was classical music, and we would do choral music and really hard a cappella music. And then the second half of the year was pop rock. Like we would put on pop shows, and we would do like rock concerts and that kind of stuff. And we traveled the world with the choir. Like I went to Europe twice, and which you're here in UK, it doesn't seem like a big thing, but from a California girl, like to go to Paris and to go to, Prague and all those things as a college student, that was huge and incredibly eye-opening. And then we went to Hawaii and performed in Hawaii for a month, pop music, so their idea of being a performer was to be a well-rounded performer and like to find your way to do almost anything. Like you have to do pop rock, you have to do jazz, you have to do classical music, you have to know where all of this came from. You need your theory, you need your dance skills. The dancing was obviously part of it. It was like you had voice lessons, you had everything involved in to like building up your tool set so that you could actually make this job a career and make it long term. And so I'm always grateful that my little community college taught me how to have a sustainable career, and it really has.
That is amazing. I mean, I don't think we have those same opportunities here in what we would class as community colleges.
Well, it seemed like it was a bit more specialized than maybe what we have over here.
Ben Bollinger, who created the program, he's passed on a few years ago now, but he was an opera singer with USC in California, and had a really big career, and knew that he wanted the arts to be more accessible. He wanted them to come to a level where you could have, they became world famous way before I got there, but like for being a really amazing music program. Like people would come from Japan and from China to come to the school, this community college in the middle of Glendora, California, like kind of a nowhere town. That's bad. I'm sorry, Glendora, you're never going to hear this, but it was a fine town, but not Beverly Hills and not Los Angeles. It was near Los Angeles, like 50 minutes away. But, in this town where the college was like, build the program and build it however you want. And he did. And it's still running. It's now run obviously by other people as he's passed on, but it's still a place where people come from around the world to study with either the instrumental side, the jazz side, or the choir program, which is the theater program as well. So,
and you touched upon saying how you felt like at the time for bigger women there wasn't as many opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about like some of those struggles that you did actually face, where perhaps you didn't maybe land a role for that reason, which seems insane to me, but I find that quite interesting if you can touch a little bit upon that.
Well, it's something that still continues to happen. It's not as rampant, but when I first got to New York, there might have been one plus size role, either male or women, because at the time they were only doing the binary. Now they've actually opened up that somewhat, where there's non-binary and transgender and amazing roles like that. But still somewhat to this day, there's generally like one big person plus size role on Broadway at a time in a season that has, I don't know, 45 shows in it. So one role in one show out of 45 shows. You know what I mean? Yeah. So all of us big people got to be really friendly because we were always at the same auditions together. And what's fun is that as a character actor, right? That's what I consider myself to be, a character actor. We generally don't look like any other character actor, right? We're all completely individual, which is amazing, but also can work against you. Because then you're like, well, I am this thing, and they want that thing, but I know the person that does that thing, so let me give you their number. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but it is difficult. It's always a thing. You go into an audition, and because of your size, and this still happens, people assume that you're lazy, or people assume that you're not talented because of your size, because how does talent exist in a big person? Which is absurd. It's completely absurd, but it is a preconceived notion that a lot of people have about people that are of size, that, oh, because you're fat or whatever, which that word doesn't bother me. I know it does bother some people, but because you're fat, you can't possibly contain talent. And I don't know if you're allowed to cuss, but that's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Like, you can absolutely say that.
Okay, great. So it's total bullshit. And it's sort of like getting past the preconceived notions of people that see, they only want like the leggy blonde, you know, who's 6 feet tall, who's a girl. It's like, how does that exist in the world? I don't think that's fair. But you know what I mean? It happens every show and every audition. It is less now, but it's one of those things where you know going in that you already have a mountain to climb that nobody else does. You have to climb this whole rocky mountain range just to get to the baseline of where everybody else starts. And in one way, I think that it's very useful. It obviously is soul crushingly hard, but it gives you a fortitude that not everybody has, right? So the rejections you face in the business, which everyone faces, it doesn't matter what level you're at. You can be lowest ensemble member to multi-million-dollar Hollywood star. Everybody faces rejection continuously. Those rejections sort of start early, right? As a big girl, it started early for me, and it stayed my whole life and continues to stay. But you build up a skin a bit. You know what I mean? A thick skin of like, okay. And you have to learn to move on from it. It's the hardest thing still somewhat, that you look back and go, man, yeah, it came down between me and that other person.
Yeah.
And maybe, and you don't always know the reason why, but maybe that's the reason that they got it. But I don't focus on why I don't get things anymore. Maybe that's age and experience. It just turns out that it was them, right? So it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for them, good for them. They get the job. I'll get a different job that I'm really right for. Even in Orange is the New Black, you mentioned Orange is the New Black, which is literally the biggest TV thing I've ever done. I was on it for 2 seasons, the season 6 and 7, the final 2. And it actually changed my perception of being a big person, because they had seen me when I did my Broadway show, The Last Ship, which was written by Sting, the rock icon. They had seen me, and it was 4 years of auditions for them for Orange is the New Black before I booked anything on there. But they had seen me on Broadway, and they kept calling me in over and over again for 4 years, just off and on every few months or so, because they saw something in me that they wanted on their show. Because that show was really a groundbreaker for diversity, for representation on all kinds of levels, including size. And they knew that they wanted me in there somehow, but it wasn't right until it was. And then I booked the show. And when I showed up for my costume fitting, I brought all the undergarments that I always have to wear when I'm on stage in a show, right? That keep you tucked in, that make sure you don't jiggle, especially as a big person. You know, the undergarments that are not fun to wear, but you always have to. So I brought them with me because I imagined they wouldn't have them. And I have been taught that, right? God forbid you be you. Let's make you thinner, even if you're not, you know what I mean? Don't jiggle. And so I brought them out. I was like, I brought all these. Do you want me to put them on? And the head wardrobe designer and costume designer, she's like, those look really comfortable. How about we just tailor everything to you so you look good and you feel good?
Wow. And
it blew my mind because I didn't realize that was an option. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's make me look good and feel good at the same time without trying to morph me into something that the world would see as more acceptable. And it changed everything literally in that moment. Now I don't allow that crap to happen anymore.
Yeah.
Wow,
I don't allow them to be like, let's put you, I'm like, no.
So
Yeah.
that show,
What was that show?
even behind the scenes, was groundbreaking.
Completely. And they were so supportive. It was female driven. Gingy, and I can't think of her last name because I'm a horrible person, but Gingy is the one that created it. She was the showrunner and she created it and she wrote on it. They had a group of writers and everything, but that would rotate per episode. But it was so incredible to be on the set, just to be there with all of the actors and actresses and performers and the creatives. It was so supportive, and it was the first TV thing I'd ever done. And I ended up being the first person they shot for the first scene for the first day of season 6. So it was like being shot out of a cannon. I had never done like on camera classes. I had always loved TV and film, and I'm a rabid and like consumer of like, not content because I hate that word, but like art that is TV and that is film, because I think it's all art. And it teaches us lessons and shows us amazing things. And so I'd always been a fan of actors. I would go on like binges of like, I want to watch everything that this actor has done for their entire career, to watch the progression. So it's all research to me. But luckily I'd had a friend who was a director of mine and not on the show, but otherwise in theater. And I asked her for some advice, and she wrote me the best letter. And like just breaking it all down and just explaining it to me in the most concise terms and the most generous terms. And I still have that letter, and I pass it on to other people sometimes just because I'm like, this is the best advice. Make friends with a cameraman. You know what I mean? Like, it was the first thing. But yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah, but the show was groundbreaking both on screen and behind the scenes.
Do you remember? You said you were the first person in the first scene of that season. Do you remember what that scene was?
Yeah, so I know exactly what it was. It actually, I think, is how season 6 opens.
Oh, it literally is the first scene of the series,
which is random because they don't normally shoot in order.
Yeah.
So it just happened to be that, you know what I mean? And I don't know if actually it was the first scene or if it was like one of the very first in the episode, but it helped introduce the new prison. And it was me standing on one foot, balancing on one foot, because I'd read something about it. And so I had to do take after take after take of me balancing on one foot. Luckily, I was good at it. They actually were like, can you be worse at it? I was like, yeah, sure. I'm too good at balance. So they wanted me to flop a little. I was like, sorry, I took dance classes a very long time, so I have really good balance. They were like, be worse. I was like, great. I will lower my expectations of my balance right now.
I mean, Ginger seems to be like such a fun character to play, right?
Oh, God. She was so good. She was so good.
Yeah.
So what happens is they write the first like few episodes, 4 episodes generally, and then they cast the show. And then once they cast the people, they write for the people that they have cast. I don't know that Ginger originally, and spoiler alert ahead for those who have not watched the last few seasons of Orange is the New Black, which happened like, almost 10 years ago. But the storyline with the fantasy inmate, I don't think existed until after they had cast me, because for that show I was cast as a recurring role. And so what that means is I didn't know if I would be in the next episode until like a day or two before it started shooting. But I figured that if I could shoot 1 or 2 days per episode, which would take 2 weeks an episode, I could make all of my bills for the month. So all I had to do was be on the set like 1 or 2 days per episode, and I was set. And what ended up happening is I ended up being in every single episode of season 6. There was an episode, I had 7 episodes that we'd filmed, and all of a sudden we got to episode 8 and I wasn't in it. And I was like, my streak is broken. What a bummer. And then I was like, oh, well, it was fun while it lasted. And then I get a phone call from my agent like the next day going like, hey, are you actually available tomorrow? And I was like, for what? They're like, they've added a scene and you're in it. Can you film it? I was like, yes, I can.
Yes.
And I think I had like a line or 2 lines, whatever. But I walked in on that set. I was like, yay, my streak is intact. See, episode 8, yay. And I was at Crafty, which is the table where they have all the fun food and snacks. Like you can have anything you want, basically. And I was getting, I don't know, a Sprite and a I don't know, granola bar or whatever was fancy for the time. No, it wasn't fancy. It was just fun. But the Hillary, the writer for that episode, walks up. She's like, "Oh, hey, I'm glad you're here." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm glad I'm here." She's like, "Yeah, we were writing the show and we were going through and we're like, there's something missing. What's missing?" In the writer's room. And I was like, "Oh, wow, crazy." She's like, "Yeah, we realized it was you. We were missing you. And so we wrote you in." And I was like, that's awesome. So,
it
be a good person
like,
and make an impact, and maybe they'll write you to think you're not there.
It sounds like the best job ever. And how interesting that one of the biggest ever Netflix shows, it just goes to show, doesn't it, that if the behind the scenes is like comfortable for all of the actors and everyone gets on.
And people are pleasant to each other.
Yes, we do preach this quite a lot, Shawna, about just being a nice person goes so far.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things. Let me reiterate that for everybody listening. Being kind matters. Mm-hmm. It matters immensely. If you are nice and polite and on time, and by on time I mean early, and ready to do what you're supposed to do, right? Be prepared, do the work, be on time, be nice. That is 80% of the things you have to overcome in the business. Truly. Yeah. Because if you throw a fit, if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, if you haven't done your work on your own, it shows and you don't get hired again, honestly. Another thing I booked, Russian Doll. I was on Russian Doll for just an episode, season 2. And I booked it because Natasha Lyonne and I had worked in Orange is the New Black together. And she wrote, starred, and directed Russian Doll, and it was amazing. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to come be a role on the show?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I got like 3 days of work just because we were nice. You know what I mean? Like, okay, I have skill too. Let's not.
Of course.
I am kind of talented in some ways. You know what I mean? I have a skill set that I use.
Absolutely.
So I have the goods to back it up. You know what I mean? But also, I think I was remembered because of it. Because I'm fun to work with. I'm good. I'm funny, and I can get the job done, and I get it done quickly. So. It's really important, man. It's really important to be kind. It's always one of the things I've wanted to do my whole life was to always try and be kind. Yeah. Still have boundaries because boundaries are important. Don't be a pushover, but be kind and be willing to do the work. And man, it'll take you far.
Everybody make sure you listen to that. My goodness, it's what I preach every day, Shawna, to all of the kids at the school. So it's nice to hear someone as successful as you preach it as well. Just going back to the Sting show, Shaun and I read something earlier that we wanted to ask you about. Is it true that the opening number was actually of the second half, I think we read, was specifically written for you by Sting? Is that true?
Yes.
Wow.
That is absolutely true. So, okay, I like this story a lot. I'm sorry if it rambles on, but I want to give you the whole thing. Okay?
Yes, let's go.
So when I was young, when I was a teenager, right, I have always loved Sting. Always. And I had a soul deep level knowledge. It was a knowing that I was going to work with Sting one day when I was a kid, when I was a teenager. And I didn't know how, and I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll be a backup singer of his, right? This is when I'm like, I don't know, 15, 16. Maybe I'll be a backup singer for his band or something for him. And that'll be how I work with him. And because it was just a knowing. It wasn't like I hope one day. No. It was a full on knowing. And so I started researching his background singers, and turns out they're like theory geniuses, right? They all play 14 instruments that aren't related to one another. So they're like banjo and harmonica and clarinet, all this stuff that I have never learned how to do. And they just know every chordal progression of everything ever. And I was like, well, there goes that dream. And so I put it aside, right? Like I could get better at theory and I could maybe try and learn an instrument, which I never have. But like, oh, well, that maybe this is not supposed to happen and I should just let it go. And then I was out doing Les Miserables, actually. And I had heard in the trade papers that he was writing a musical. And all of a sudden that dream and that knowing sort of sprang back to life going, oh my God, here it is. But I was already out on the road with a show. And so they had cast the workshop of it and they were progressing going forward with it. And I never even got a chance to audition for it. I was like, man, he writes a musical and I don't even get to go in for it. What a bummer. But you know, it was in the works. It was going around. I was like, well, it'll be okay. Everything will be fine. They were taking Les Miserables to Broadway. They were taking our tour to Broadway. But we all had to audition for it. And I really, really thought, because Broadway was the ultimate dream at the time for me. Here it is. Here's the moment. I'm Madame Thénardier. I've had Claude Michel Schoenberg and Alain Boublil physically tell me to my face that they don't know if I was born too late, if they wrote the show too early, but I was the Madame Thénardier that they had always meant to have. They told me that to my face. And I was like, well, here incredible. It is. Here's the moment I get to go to Broadway finally. The ultimate dream comes true. So they use one of our performances on the road as our audition. And they call us, they're going to call us individually to let us know what's going on, if we're going to go forward with it or whatever. I was so sure that I was getting it that I recorded the phone call. And I recorded the phone call that basically went like this. Thank you so much for the last 3 years, but you're not right for the show.
Oh.
I was like, wait. What? What? I've performed 1,037 performances as Madame Thénardier, and the writers of the show say that I am Madame Thénardier, but I'm not right for the show in New York. So I didn't book it. And I'm depressed, obviously. Mm. And after the show ends, I go to my house in Florida that I bought from my parents because of Les Mis. Thank you, house that Les Mis bought. And I am like, you know, in the shower going like at 3 a.m, because that sometimes happens when I'm, you know, depressed or like trying to think through my life. I go, okay, I know there's a reason for everything. And I actually had just read the announcement of who booked it. And it turns out that Cameron Mackintosh wanted all of the principals to have had either a Tony nomination or a Tony win. It was almost universal that every principal in that show had a Tony nomination, Tony win. And so I was like, well, I certainly don't have that. I haven't been on Broadway yet. And so I was depressed. I'm like, okay, well, interesting. Well, I don't know what's next and I don't know how it's going to work, but I know it'll be okay. But maybe just open the door. Somebody open the door and I'll go through. And the next day, I got a call from my agent going, hey, can you come to New York the next day to audition for this new musical? It's written by Sting. And I was like, yep, sure can. So I booked a plane ticket, packed a bag, was to the airport in an hour and a half from when I booked the ticket, which was crazy. I was learning the music on the fly. I was learning the accent that it was going to be, which was, you know, the Newcastle accent. And luckily Sting had recorded a demo version of the show, so I knew what his accent was going to be and that kind of thing, used it. And I got to the audition. It was just for the casting director, Craig Burns at Telsey and Company. And it was an audition where it was pre-screened, like, here, just sing something, blah, 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 go over the sides, that kind of thing. And then we'll see what happens. And so I was flying, 2,300 miles just for a chance to audition for the big guy. And I did it. And I had learned that I got the audition, the final callback, where Sting was going to be there. And so a lot of stuff went wrong during that day. Like, for the first audition, the pre-screen, I had food poisoning. I had eaten a salad at somewhere and had food poisoning. So my entire mind was going, don't throw up. Don't throw up. You're an audition. Just don't throw up. And so I ended up being like sharp on my last note or something. And what I would do is I would go to the movies after an audition and sort of like get my mind out of it. And in the middle of the movie, I get this phone call from agents going, hey, so you have the final callback. It's happening Saturday. This was a Thursday. They have some notes for you. Do you want them? And I'm like, yes, because you very rarely get feedback, right? And so the notes were, okay, can you wear something more like everyman? Like you're just working in a bar or you're just an everyday person kind of outfit. Because I had, of course, worn a nice dress. And the next one was, you don't necessarily have to, you went a little sharp on the last note of that one. So maybe change the song or do a different ending so you don't have to worry about it. I was like, okay, great. And the third note was, go full on Madame Thenardier. And I was like, well, crap, at least I have that one done. Like go balls out, hard ass kind of, with the character. And I was like, great, done. So I'm neurotically early because, like I said, being early is being on time. And for this final callback on Saturday, turns out a pipe had burst in the audition room. And so they moved it to a different building, but they hadn't contacted everybody. So I have a dear friend who, he was my Thenardier on the road. He was up for the Sting show as well. Gosh, I told you this is a long story, but it's good. Don't worry.
No, it's great.
He was up for it as well. And he had an audition before me. So he called me and was like, okay, this is the address of the building. You're on the 7th floor. I just had my audition. This is what to expect when you walk into the room because it's in somebody's office. Be careful of the carpet that's been a little bit pulled out because you might trip. Also, you're going to be standing under a low light because it looked like they took away a conference table and you're going to be standing on it. You're shorter than me. You're not going to have to worry about it, but no, it's there. Also, when you look through the room, the piano is facing out the main window, so his back is to you, the accompanist, so just know that that's a thing. As you look at the room, they're going to all be sitting on these couches, so they're going to be facing you like they're in a living room and you're on the other side in this conference area. He's like, don't get discouraged by that. Have a good time, kick ass, and I'll talk to you later. So I had knowledge that almost anybody didn't, right? That they were behind by an hour and a half, that this was the room setup, that I had to be careful of the carpet, that I had to watch the low-hanging lamp, that all of them would be sitting over there. So I had it in my mind knowing, okay, this is great. I have all of this prepared. And I know in my mind what's going on. So I was sitting there in the waiting room, which was basically just cubicles of this office, which was weird. And you're like, this is not how I expected this to go, but here we are. Be flexible. That's an important trait. And so I was waiting. And as I was sitting there, I realized, wait, I'm the only person that looks like me here right now. The last ship was a lot of dudes on a ship, right? The show was a lot of guys and like 5 women. And I didn't know that at the time, but it makes more sense now looking back. That it was like me and one other girl who looked like she was 16. And I was like, we are definitely not up for the same role. So that's fun. And like, people go in and they go out. And it eventually came to me. They were like an hour and a half, 2 hours late because of the mishap with the bus pipe or whatever. But they finally got to me. And I get up to go, like I'm on deck. It's a baseball term. You guys don't have baseball here, but means you're about to bat next, right? You're about to go in. It's somebody's in there now and you're going to go next. So I'm on deck. And all of a sudden, Bernie Telsey, who's the head of the office, who was like very rarely ever at these auditions, comes out. He had been wandering around like getting people to the audition, showing them like his assistants, like how to get them here or whatever. He goes out and he talks to me. He's like, okay, so they're going to take a little break and then we're going to come to you after the break. And I'm like, oh, God, I tapped myself up and now they're going to take a break. But so then you're like, audition blue balls. Okay. Like, it's like, nah. So then you're like, but it's okay. It's okay. It'll be fine. Because I realized, they probably had to pee. But this is good. Because then they're all going to go to the loo. And they're not going to be thinking about how they have to go to the bathroom while they're trying to listen to me. This is great. They're going to be a little bit refreshed. Mm-hmm. They're going to come back in the room, not worrying about their next water or cup of tea because it's too much. And they can be focused on me. So this is actually good. It's fine. It's fine that there was a delay. It worked out for the best. Like a lot of things happen, it generally works out for the best. Mm-hmm. So, other side note of life. I go in, it's my turn. Bernie Telsey comes in, and he had been going back out, right? Like he hadn't been staying in the audition rooms. But he went in, and then he went and go and sat down at a chair. And I was like, I guess Bernie's staying. And so, like I know him. Like I know Bernie Telsey personally, but that's just what you call him, Bernie. It's like, no, yeah, Bernie and I. No, that's not this. But he's like, here's the director, Joe Montella, who was standing right inside the door. And then he went away. And Joe's like, hi, how are you? He put his arm around me and walked me over to the piano. I was like, hey, so what are you going to sing? What are you blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I am not used to directors being right there, like personable. They're normally sitting behind a table staring at you with blank stares or judging stares. And here's this guy who's like a Tony winner, is both an actor and a director. His arms around me. We've never met before, but it didn't feel creepy. So that's something to know. He was so kind and like warm and welcoming. So I went over to the accompanist who happened to be, I guess, the associate music director. And I go up to him and he's like, yeah, what are you going to sing? And it was like the harshest, like slap in the face, like rude kind of like, whatever. And I was like, well, I have these options. And he's like, yeah, I just want you something you're going to actually sound good on. And I was like, ooh, okay. Tough room. Great. Well, at least he is, as the accompanist. And so I gave him my tempo very specifically. Always know exactly where you want to do. Show him the cuts. Show him exactly where you're going from, where you're going to. If you have to go back, where the repeat is. He's like, yeah, why don't you just let me play it? And I was like, okay, great. And I went to the center of the room, being careful of the carpet that was turned up and also watching my head because of the low-hanging lamp. Thank you very much, Tim Glenn. And faced them. And I sort of did the sweep of the room, to like say hi. So from left to right, I just was sort of like looking everybody in the eye and going by them and like sort of like, hi, how are you? Sting, of course, was dead center right in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I sort of caught him out of my periphery as I started from left to right. And I realized that if I looked at him, it was gonna be like Medusa and I was gonna freeze. So I literally like scan the room, skip that space, scan the room, like just jump over, like don't look directly center because you're gonna turn to stone. He's like sitting there all cool, laid back with his scarf on. I was like, good Lord, you're way too cool for me. You're Sting, you're a rock star. And so I do it and it starts to play. And the song is wordy, right? It's a little wordy to begin with. That's why I was very specific about my tempo. The accompanist, who's been so kind and pleasant this entire time, decides to play it twice as fast as I told him.
God.
So my wordy song suddenly becomes really wordy. And I, in my head, go, this is not the room where you go, I need to start over. Can we just start over again? This is not that room. That moment is not going to happen. And you just have to go for it and make it work. And so I did, and it was twice as fast, and I did it. And then there was at one point where I was like, I felt like I was a measure and a half behind because of how it was. I was like, please think this is jazz. Please think that this is a direct choice. Please think that I'm just being creative and free with the melody. Like, I'm just going to get going through. I'm just going to keep going. And we get it to an end. It's a big note at the end, nailed it. And that was great. And I'm like in my head going, oh shit, oh fuck, oh God, okay, that happened. That's fine. We made it through. It's cool. And I'm just like smiling pleasantly. It's like, oh, thanks. Because everybody in the room was like, oh, wow, yeah, great. Ooh, oh, God, oh, what a voice, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just going, oh God, okay, we made it through. We're cool. We're just going to smile and look like everything was planned. What was funny is there's a moment when you audition, right? That can sometimes come to you, and it doesn't always, but it did to me in this moment, where I inhaled right before you start to speak. Like you inhale like every time you start to speak. But in that inhale, in that split second, I literally knew without a doubt exactly what they wanted. It hasn't happened really since, well, maybe a couple times, but like not since then has it ever been that crystal clear in my mind of, oh, this is what they want. Because normally you're not trying to go in. I mean, you want to go in and give them what you think they want, but you can't ever anticipate what that really is, right? You can only make your choices and hope that they're on the path of where they'll lead you eventually, right? But there is that moment of like, oh, I know exactly what it is. But I had it for this. And I inhaled, took my breath in before I started speaking. And in the scene, I was breaking up a bar fight. And I hadn't planned to go as big as I ended up going, right? I hadn't planned to like go full. I mean, I was going to go full out but the level of the energy I was going to expand. When I took that breath in, I was like, oh, well, if this isn't the place where it is to just go for it. And so I did. And in the scene is breaking up. And so I just was like, like broke them all up, imaginary people. And like everybody in there, and everybody was like, whoa. Like, you could see him, like, sort of get slammed back in their seat, like, well, shit, okay, great. You know what I mean? Like, here we go. And as the door was closing, all of a sudden I hear Sting go, that was Shawna Hamic, right? And everybody goes, yeah, that was Shawna Hamic. And then the door closed. And I was like, if nothing else, Sting, he knows my name for 2 minutes, right? Yep. If nothing else, Sting knows my name. After I booked the show, I booked it that next Monday at 11:11 a.m. By the way, 11:06 a.m., which is interesting because when I booked Orange Is the New Black, I booked it at 11:06 a.m. on a Monday.
Stop!
So that's interesting.
Oh my God!
Just a side note. I know, crazy, right? So anytime my phone rings at 11:06 a.m. on a Monday, I'm like, "Hello, Broadway TV? What is going on? Is it you?" No, but like, opened the Out of Town before I went to Broadway, one of the producers came up to me. He's like, you do know that, you actually may not know, but I wanted to tell you, you are one of the first people that was cast unanimously and almost immediately. And Sting,
Wow.
This was Jimmy Nail, who was the lead in the show. He's like, by the way, he left that audition and went home and wrote the song for you. Like that night.
Oh my
because
God.
of your audition, and they knew they were going to cast you. He knew that you couldn't just be in the background without having something special. And so, yeah, they wrote the song for me.
Amazing.
He wrote the song for me. It opened the second act as a way of getting the audience back into the show. It was the all-female number. It was called Mrs. D's Rant, and I was Mrs. D's. And yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, there's more to that story, but like, also they weren't going to record it for the cast album, but they told me like 5 minutes before curtain on one show. And so I was like crying for like the first 5 minutes of the show because my original song that Sting had written for me wasn't going to be on the cast album. And Jimmy Nail saw me crying. He's like, "What up?" I was like, "No, it's fine. You know, I just heard they're not going to record my song. You know, it's the only solo that they're not recording. It's okay." And he told Sting, and at the end of the show that night, because Sting would always come and hang out, he came up to me as we were leaving. He's like, "I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "I'm going to take care of it. Don't worry." And so he wrote to Rob Mathis, who was the most genius orchestrator, and he was with the show. He did all the orchestration for the show, and he was the conductor and stuff for the recording. And he wrote me an email. It's like, "Well, if you have $30,000, we can put it on the album. But other than that, we'll maybe be able to take 2 seconds at the end of the entire day of recording, maybe, to get it done." And I was like, "Great, I'll take whatever chance."
Yeah.
But it ended up that I got there, and this harkens back to be kind, right? Because I would go down and say hi to every single person in the orchestra before every single show. Both in Chicago and on Broadway. It's still something I like to do if I have the access to it. I can't do it for this show, but like if I can, I still try and do it. But I got there to record a background for one of the songs, and it was all 5 of the women were there and some other people. And Rob Mathis goes out because they're going to put the band on a break, right? Because they're required for the union. And he's like, he goes back in for a second. He comes back out and he's like, "You have 2 takes." And he goes back in. So first thing in the morning, what I found out is the band opted to not take a break to enable me to record my song.
Wow.
So be kind. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So that's on the album. That's on the cast album.
It is. It's on the cast album. It's not on the physical version, but it is on the digital version. And so for one day when it was released, I outsold Sting on the cast album because he had a song. And I was trying to go up and like be all snarky, like, "Hey, I'm outselling you. You're Sting. You're like multi-platinum artist. I'm outselling you today." And he looked at me and was like, "I'm so happy for you." I was like, "Damn it, why are you nice?"
Be kind.
I wanted to rub it in your face. He's like, "No, I'm really happy for you." I'm like, "No, all right, thanks, Sting."
I love that.
So,
What a story, Shawna. Thank you so much
that's
for
the
sharing
long
that.
answer.
Love it.
The short answer is, yeah, he definitely wrote a song for me.
I'm so glad we got to that story, though,
I
because
prefer
that's
the
a
long
brilliant
version.
one.
Yeah. I wish we had hours and hours and hours with you, but I'm looking at
we could probably do 15 more minutes based on my call time.
Okay.
Great. Well, then, shall we?
In that case, shall we get to the big one?
Yeah.
Go on.
So, as you can probably tell by the name of the podcast, we like to ask our guests the most difficult question in the world, which is, what do you believe you were made for?
I was made to impact the lives of people using art and performance and song. I was made to create a positive impact in the world. And I've known it for a long time. And I hope it doesn't sound like conceited to say it, but I wanted and have always and continue to want to be a representative of people who feel unseen and unheard. I want to give a positive, successful example of what can be done when you believe in yourself, when you go after it with everything you have, when you find within yourself the strength to overcome the difficult and the hard and just keep going anyway. I want to have a measure of success not for the sake of fame, which feels selfish, but for for visibility, to be somebody that people can go, she did it, and maybe I can. And I think I'm fully living in the what was I made for. I was made to do exactly what I'm doing now, and that's what I plan on doing for the rest of my life. How about that?
That's us clapping. What an answer. Oh my gosh, I've got goosebumps. I'm like, yes, Shawna, preach.
Find your truth, people.
Yes.
It may seem pompous, but sometimes the big ideas are what change the world. Sometimes it's the small ones, right? Sometimes it's the small steps that lead to big things. In general, it's the small steps that lead to bigger things. Every step forward is positive, but even sometimes step backwards, they lead you to the right path, right? Things that turn out that you think you can't possibly overcome. Things like, I don't know, being in a character in a show for 3 years and then being told you're not right for the show, lead you to achieving your lifelong goal of Broadway, but also lead you to achieving the goal that you would set aside, which was a soul level deep knowledge that you would work with Sting one day. So not only did you get your dream, you got it bigger than you ever imagined it was possible. So even steps backwards are important. And they don't derail you. Don't let them derail you. Just know it's like a redirect, and that you can, it's just shifting your focus to where it really needs to be.
I feel like so many of our listeners are going to be so inspired by your whole story. Honestly, it's you're one of the first guests we've had that we actually don't know at all personally, or like a friend of a friend. And so we were both like, we're basing this totally on your talent in a way, because we didn't know you personally. We've seen you in Orange is the New Black. I've seen you in Unfortunate, but well,
thank God you're kind, first of all.
It's important.
It's
I
so
could have been
important.
like, I actually, when I emailed you, it was like, I can only be on an hour. I was like, they're going to think I'm a pompous asshole. I just have a conflict now. That's really the point. I would have talked to you for 2 hours. I just had to get to the theater and get all the full get-up for like 20 minutes of photos. I just don't have the time now because, of course, they picked Wednesday.
Of course. No, I actually want people to know that after I came and saw Unfortunate, I just DM'd you on Instagram because I was like, I loved your performance, and I thought, you know what? She'd be amazing on the pod.
And you're a massive Orange is the New Black
and I'm
fan
a huge
as well,
Orange is the New,
so.
yeah. And so I messaged you that night, and I came home to Shaun and I went, look, Shawna was the Ursula in the show. I've messaged her. I know it's like a complete shot in the dark. I'll probably never, ever hear back. And you messaged me back in probably 20, 25 minutes. And I was like, oh my God. So no, the fact you gave us an hour, we are so, so grateful.
Yeah, very grateful.
And it's going to...
My DMs are open specifically, and they're not monitored by anybody but me. One, I'm not that famous. Like, I'm not overrun with messages where I couldn't possibly find yours in the mix. Like, that's not a thing. But also, it's part of what I was made for. You know, the answer I just gave you. Like, I want to hear from people when they've been inspired of like going, look, you represented me, you showed who I am on stage, and that meant something to me. It helps me to keep going in the hard times, right? It's not selfish in that sense, but it's affirming in the sense like, okay, I'm on the right path, which is great. And also I want to be there for moments when like people are like, look, I don't know what to do. Can you help me with such and such? I want to be an actor. Where do I go? How do I start? And sometimes I'm able to give them advice, but it's more, I just think communication is important, and I want to be open and honest with people, and honest that it's not always great, and it's not always happy, although I find I curate my Instagram, like most people do, but I'll share the hard with anybody that wants to know it, because it's not easy, but it's worth it to me, right? The hard is worth it to me to do what I love and what I've meant to be doing my whole life. So for Orange is the New Black specifically, I'll share a little bit of dark with you, because why not? When I was on Orange is the New Black, when the show first came out, season 6 first came out, I got a lot of messages, which were amazing. I got a lot of followers suddenly. Like, I think I had 3,000 maybe followers, and those were just all friends-ish. And then I ended up being over like 14 or 15,000 because of the show. But like, I would respond as well to those messages. And then there was this group of people that added me to a group chat Please don't do that. But also, they added me to a group chat and they were like, look, we added you because we created this amazing video for you, right? We took a lot of time and we just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Would you watch it, please? And I was like, okay, it's like a minute and a half long. I can watch this video and like go, thank you so much for the effort. For the first like few seconds or whatever, 30 seconds, it was just, stills of me on the show and like music underlying it. And about 30 seconds in, a voiceover comes on and it goes, hey, you fat pig, you should go kill yourself. How dare you exist like you are? You're disgusting to look at. We think you're horrible. We want you to go kill yourself, you fat, stupid pig. What a slop. And I watched the whole thing. I watched the rest of the minute of them saying that over and over again. And what they wanted is they wanted a response that was like, or like, oh no, how dare you? You destroyed me. And I just was like, oh, wow. Yeah, thanks for the effort. And like, oh, did you watch it all the way through? Like they were egging me on. And I was like, yeah, watched it all minute and a half. Okay, thanks so much. Bye-bye.
So were these people supposed to be Orange is the New Black fans? Were they supposed to be like fans of the show?
Yeah, they were supposed to be fans of the show who just wanted to see if they could take a swipe at me. Because how dare I be fat and successful? Mm-hmm. So, suckers. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Thanks for wasting all your time, however long that took, and however many takes it took for you to get that voiceover properly aligned. And thanks for all your wasted effort because you don't affect me at all. Like it's, and that probably would have destroyed somebody younger. Yeah. You know what I mean? Somebody more inexperienced. Well, but it's not always great. It's not always happy, even now. But yeah, having my DMs open is important because we got to keep communicating with one another and uplifting each other.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that with us as well, because that it's one of the biggest issues we face with the young people at the school actually is online bullying and trolling. And we actually discussed it in our episode that was released this week about how that is probably one of the reasons why people won't pursue their dreams is because already they put out a video of them singing or something and they get more hate than they get support. And so I think it's important. I'm so grateful that you shared that because it just goes to show like
it's not all sunshine.
It's not
all sunshine. And this specific road to being an artist, to being creative in the world where people want you to stay to a little box and a little peg that they want to put you in, like it's already hard. And then to add the addition of social media and things, I don't know if I would have made it through my childhood, to be honest with you, based on what was going on then with adding the pressure of social media and bullying and negging and, oh my God, trolling. It's hardcore. It's hardcore. And it's about learning how to handle it, how to handle the way it makes you feel, how to handle the rejection, how to handle the vitriol and the hate that comes at you because people are judging from behind a computer screen when they're not courageous enough to go out and do it themselves or post it themselves. I think the point is you still have to be courageous. You have to be brave and you have to believe in yourself above everything else. You have to believe in that little spark that's in you that makes you want this career, that makes you want to be a singer, to be an actor, to be a dancer. You have to cherish it. You can't smother it so much that it'll go out, and you can't protect it so much because you have to let it breathe and you have to let it grow in the way it's supposed to grow. Each path is your own. Each journey is going to be your own and it'll be difficult. There are people that can help you through it. If you need help, reach out to it. Find your one friend that you go, they're going to tell me the truth, but they're going to support me anyway, right? Like even if the telling the truth might be a little bit like, oh, you need to work on that note or that note was flat. There's always something to work on every day, even for me. I'm working on jokes in the show every single moment. Every time I do it, I'm trying to figure out how do I make it better, right? Being an artist is not being stagnant. It is being expansive and creative continuously. Because once you start, you just do the same thing over and over again, you're not an artist, you're a craftsman, which are wonderful things to be. But to be an artist is to be always expanding and always contracting and always moving through and forward. So as people come at you online, as people come at you, I don't know, in person sometimes, to be just so hate-filled and negative, know that a lot of what irks them about you is that you're brave enough to do it anyway. So just keep being brave and keep trying.
Shawna, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been so lovely to hear from you.
It really has.
It's my pleasure.
And, where can everybody...
Nice to share a cuppa with you.
Yes, same.
Oh my God, we forgot.
What?
We forgot to ask the drink of choice question, and you told me before that you were having a cup of tea. Is that because you're in the UK at the moment, or do you drink tea anyway?
I love tea, but I haven't been as much of a lover as tea since I've been here. I think it's because y'all do it right, but and I've learned to do it right. It's a nice rainy day here in Blackpool, and it felt like a nice time for a warm cup. By the way, the UK sugar tax is bullshit. I'm going to say that too. I missed my regular Sprite, which didn't have artificial sugar. Apple teaser is like the only thing I found I can drink. That and sugar and tea. It's already means I drink more water. Ugh.
Oh no!
But stupid sugar.
Welcome to the UK.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Shawna, do you have a show tonight?
Oh yeah, well I have to go do the photo shoot and then I have a show. So
amazing. Well, break a leg for that. And thank you so much. We are so grateful. Everyone needs to go and see Unfortunate, which is on until July. We'll make sure we link everything on this pod episode, which will be out next
Yeah, Wednesday. And if you haven't yet, where have you been? Watch Orange is the New Black, because it's been out for ages. Come on, people.
I know, where are you if you've not seen that already? I mean,
it's been watched by over 101 million people. You can be another.
There you go.
But yeah, thank you very, very much.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for letting me come on and inviting me on. I'm happy to have shared the time with you.
Oh, you are so welcome. It was lovely to meet you. And enjoy the rainy weather and the sugar tax.
Me and my cuppa, we're going to enjoy the rainy weather before we have to leave in like 2 minutes. Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So thank you for listening and watching if you're on YouTube. Don't forget, if you haven't already, please like, follow, subscribe to everything we do on social media at
whatwasimadeforpod.
Also, drop us an email to
whatwasimadeforpod@gmail.com.
And if you could spare just 2 minutes of your time to drop us a 5-star review on your chosen podcast. Oh my God. And if you could spare just 2 minutes of your time to drop us a review on your chosen podcast. Well, I can't get this today. This is like the 10th take. Yeah, but drop us a 5-star review on your chosen podcast platform. We will see you again next week as we try to answer the question, what was I made for? Jesus.
Oh my God.
Today is not my day. Bye.
Bye. What Was I Made For is a Reynolds Studios production.